There is a mason jar sitting on a shelf in my mud room. No label. No lid even. Just a square of cheesecloth tied over the top with string. Inside it is a white powder. You have already got in your own kitchen cabinet right now, and it costs about $1 at any grocery store. You have walked past it your whole life. I have had English visitors stand in my kitchen, in my mud room, in the room where we keep the boots and the barn coats, and ask me the same question every single time. What do you use? It doesn't smell like anything in here. And that is exactly the point. Not flowers, not ocean breeze, not anything. Just clean air. The way air is supposed to be before a company decided you needed to pay to cover it up. My name is Elias Yoder. I farm in Lancaster County, and I'm going to show you the dollar trick we have used for longer than anyone in my family can remember. Plus, 3 more things we do around the house that cost almost nothing, and then I am going to tell you the part that should bother you a little, which is that the company that makes the powder I am talking about has known what it does since before my grandfather was born, and they sell you 100 other products instead of just telling you. Here's what most folks get backward. They think a house smells bad because it needs something added to it. A candle, a spray, a plug-in that puffs out scent every 15 minutes. But a smell is not a thing you cover. A smell is a thing that is still there, sitting underneath whatever you sprayed on top of it. You ever walk into a bathroom that's had 3 sprays of something flowery and you can still smell exactly what it was covering, just with flowers stacked on top? That is the whole air freshener industry in one sentence. They are not selling you clean air. They are selling you a second smell to fight your first smell, and neither one wins. The old way is different. The old way pulls the smell out of the air instead of hiding it. And the cheapest, plainest thing that does this sitting in your cupboard right now is baking soda. Here is why it works. And I want to walk you through this slow, because it is not folk magic. It is plain chemistry that my children learn before they are 10 years old at the kitchen table. Most of what makes a room smell bad: sour milk gone off in the back of the fridge, a damp towel left wadded in the bottom of a hamper, the inside of a shoe closet after barn chores, a teenage boy's gym bag left shut in the trunk of a car. Nearly all of those smells are what chemists call acidic compounds, floating loose in the air, landing on the little hairs inside your nose. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, is the opposite of acidic. It is alkaline. When that floating acid touches the baking soda, it is neutralized right there on contact. Not covered, not perfumed over. Gone. The very molecule that was carrying that smell through the air to your nose stops being that molecule. It becomes something else, something with no smell at all. That is not a trick or a folk remedy. That is the same chemistry a school science class would show you with vinegar and a balloon, just put to a quieter, more useful purpose. So here's what we do, room by room. And I want you to follow along because none of it costs more than a few dollars total for the whole house for the whole year. And I am going to give you every single one. In the refrigerator, an open box, top cut, clean off, sitting plain on the middle shelf, no fragrance added to it at all. We change it the first of every other month, the same day we turn the calendar page, so we never have to remember. That is the trick everybody half remembers their own grandmother doing, and it works today exactly the way it worked for her, because the chemistry is not changed, even though the marketing around it has. In the closets, take an old sock or the foot cut off a worn-through stocking, fill it with about half a cup of baking soda, and knot the top shut. It costs you nothing, because the sock was already done for anyway. Hang it from a nail or tuck it on the back of the shelf, and it pulls the must straight out of a closet that never gets enough air moving through it, the way a closet never does. In the shoe closet by the back door, which in any house with children and barn chores in it is the worst smelling room in the whole building, bar none, we sprinkle a spoonful straight down into each boot at night before bed and tap it back out in the morning before anyone puts the boot on. The smell does not creep back the way it does after a spray, because the spray only ever sat on top of the smell to begin with. This pulls it out of the leather itself. Under the kitchen sink, where the trash sits, and where every single house, ours included, gets that low, sour smell nobody can quite place or point to, we keep a small open dish tucked in the back corner, refreshed once a month, the same schedule as the fridge box, so it is easy to remember both at once. In the carpet, if you keep one, which most Amish houses do not, but plenty of yours will, sprinkle it dry across the whole rug at night before bed, let it sit overnight, pulling the smell up out of the fibers the way it will, and vacuum it up clean before breakfast. A rug that has been quietly holding a dog smell or a damp basement smell for a year will smell like nothing at all by the second time you do this. In the trash can itself, plain, before you even put the new bag in, a spoonful sprinkled in the bottom of the empty can. It sits under the bag and handles whatever leaks down through, which on a hot week in the summer is more than you would think. And in the car, which nobody ever thinks to treat the same as a room, but which holds smell worse than almost anywhere, because the windows stay shut for days at a time, a small open container tucked under the seat or in the door pocket does the very same job it does in your kitchen. That is the dollar trick. 7 places, 1 box, about 60 cents a month for the whole house. Now, here is the part almost nobody outside our community still does, and I am going to come back to it properly near the end, because it is the real engine behind why an Amish house carries no smell at all. But before that, let me give you 3 more old habits, the ones that cost you almost nothing, and that most English houses gave up on without ever quite noticing they had. The first is charcoal. Not the briquette kind soaked in lighter fluid from a bag at the gas station, the plain hardwood kind, or even just a handful of chunks left over cold and dead from the wood stove once the fire's fully out. We keep a small bowl of broken charcoal pieces in the mudroom and another on the cellar stairwell where the air tends to sit still and damp. Charcoal is riddled through with tiny pores, more surface inside one fist-sized chunk than you would ever believe looking at it, and it pulls moisture and odor straight down into those pores the same way it does inside a water filter, only here it is doing it to the air in your hallway instead of the water in your tap. We do not buy this. It is sitting right there in the stove from last night's fire, free for the taking. The second is fresh air itself, used on a schedule instead of left to accident. Every single morning in this house, weather allowing, the windows get opened for 15 minutes straight through, even in the cold months, even if it means everybody keeps a coat on for a quarter hour at the breakfast table. A house that trades its whole air out every morning never gets the chance to build up the staleness that a sealed-up house builds over months without anyone noticing it happening, the way a pot left simmering builds up a smell you stop being able to smell yourself because you are standing in it the whole time. This costs you nothing at all but the willingness to feel a little cold for 15 minutes. And I will tell you plainly, it is the single biggest reason a house holds no smell. bigger than the baking soda, bigger than the charcoal, bigger than anything that comes in a jar. The third is dried herbs, the way my wife keeps them, not burned, just hung plain on a string. Bundles of lavender, rosemary, or dried mint tied off and hung in the linen closet in the mud room by the back door where coats come off. They do not blast a room with scent the way a plug-in does, going off every 15 minutes whether you are there to smell it or not. They sit quiet, and the room smells like nothing at all right up until you walk close enough to brush one with your sleeve on your way through, and then it smells like a garden for half a second and settles back to nothing. That is the whole difference between a real herb and a chemical air freshener. One of them is loud all day long, asking for your attention whether you want it or not. The other waits for you and only speaks when you come close enough to ask. Now, before I go further, I want to be straight with you, the same as I always am, because there is a longer version of everything I teach on this channel than fits in any one video. The whole of it, room by room and season by season, gathered into one place at eliodersecrets.com if you want it. I will mention it once and move on, because that is not why you came today. Here is the fourth habit, and it is the one I get asked about most in the comments whenever I mention it in passing. Lemon and vinegar, boiled together on the back of the stove for 10 minutes with the kitchen window cracked. Not as a cleaner, though it does clean, but as a way of resetting the air in a kitchen after frying fish or onions, the two smells that cling to curtains and walls longer than anything else cooked in a house. A halved lemon, a quarter cup of plain white vinegar, 2 cups of water, simmered low. By the time it has reduced by half, the kitchen smells like nothing, not lemon, not vinegar, just clean, the same as the baking soda does in a closet. The fifth is something my mother always kept by the back door in the mudroom, a shallow tray of plain, coarse salt. Salt pulls moisture out of the air the same patient way the charcoal does, and a damp mudroom in spring full of wet boots and dripping coats is one of the worst-smelling rooms in any farmhouse if you let the moisture sit. A tray of salt, replaced when it goes hard and clumped, usually once a season, handles it for pennies. The sixth, and this one surprises English visitors more than any other, is plain unscented beeswax candles, lit for 10 minutes at the end of an evening, not to add a smell, but because a burning beeswax candle pulls fine particles and smoke and cooking residue out of the air as it burns. The same way some of the modern air purifiers claim to do with a fan and a filter that needs replacing every few months at $20 a filter. We keep our own bees, so the wax costs us nothing, but even a plain beeswax candle bought at a farm market runs a few dollars and lasts for months of evening use. Now, let me bring this back around to why an Amish house carries no smell at all, because it is not any one of the things I just gave you. It is all of them together, used on a steady schedule instead of reached for only after the smell has already gotten bad. That is the real secret, if you want to call it that. And it is the one thing the spray and cover way can never give you, no matter how much you spend on it. A spray is something you reach for after the smell has already won and is sitting there waiting to be covered. The baking soda in the fridge, the sock in the closet, the open window every single morning, those are not reached for after the smell arrives. They are standing there ahead of time, working quietly every single day so the smell never gets the chance to build up far enough for you to notice it in the first place. You are not covering a fire. You are not letting the fire start. So here is what I want you to do. starting this very week, and I am going to lay it out plain so you can follow it without writing anything down. 1. An open box of baking soda, top cut off, in the refrigerator. Change the first of every other month. 2. A sock filled with half a cup of baking soda, knotted shut, hung in any closet that smells musty. 3. A spoonful tapped into the toe of every boot and shoe at the back door each night, tapped back out each morning. 4. A small open dish under the kitchen sink, refreshed once a month. 5. Baking soda sprinkled dry across any carpet at night, vacuumed up clean by breakfast. 6. A bowl of cold charcoal chunks from your own fireplace or wood stove set in the mudroom or stairwell. 7. 15 minutes of open windows every single morning, weather allowing, no exceptions, even in the cold months. 8. If you want the part that makes a house feel like a home and not just clean, a bundle of dried herbs hung somewhere, you will brush past it in the course of an ordinary day. None of it together costs what one single can of spray costs at the store. All of it together actually solves the thing the spray only ever covered over. And by next week, when somebody walks into your kitchen the same way my English visitors walk into mine and stops and asks you straight out what you use in here, you are going to be able to tell them the plain truth. Nothing. That is the whole trick. And it has been sitting on the bottom shelf the entire time. Tell me in the comments which room in your own house you're going to try this in first, and tell me where you are writing in from, because I read every single one of these, and I like knowing how far a piece of plain old knowledge like this has traveled by the time it reaches you. And if your own grandmother had a trick for keeping a house clean smelling that I have not mentioned here today, I want to hear it plainly, because a good half of what I know on this channel came from somebody else's comment written under an earlier video long before it ever came out of my own kitchen. Next time, I am going to show you what my grandmother used to do to keep flies out of the kitchen in August. A glass jar, a piece of paper, and one ingredient from the pantry that you would never guess in 100 tries, and it worked for 100 years before sticky paper was ever invented, and it still works better than anything you can buy today. Until then, open a window this morning, even if it is cold out. Stay clean, stay watchful, and remember that the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.